Okay, Chair, you can go ahead.
All right, welcome to the Cmac meeting, the Community Media Access Committee meeting. We officially start, and Jeremy, what do I call you?
You can call me Jeremy, that's fine.
Okay. Jeremy, will you please do roll call?
Okay. Member Stapleton Gray? And just unmute yourself and indicate here. Yeah.
Here.
Member Siegel?
Here.
Member Kenny?
Present.
Member DeMatthew?
Here.
Member Lewis?
Here.
Member Yates?
Here.
Chair Winkelstein?
Here.
Okay. Everybody in attendance?
Yay.
Great. So as part of the beginning of the meeting, we were going to do a brief introduction. So besides now that we know your name, if you could just maybe say one or two sentences about why you wanted to be on this committee, or what's important to you about being on this committee. What's one thing that really you'd like to see us accomplish? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose somebody to speak first, and then that person that I choose, you choose the next person. So I don't have to wait for people to volunteer. So Member Stapleton Gray, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. So Ross Stapleton Gray, I've lived in Albany since 2001 and had been a school board member 2014 to 2018, and then on the library board up until its dissolution. I'm particularly interested in internet. I've been an internet guy since forever, and I've been particularly interested in things like access for students and the population in general. So I'm looking to look at that area, how we get access to digital, whether or not it's to the city, but primarily interested in the context of this committee, to civic resources, what every Albany citizen ought to have affordable to them.
Hey, wait,
go.
Just a second. I already forgot to, Member Kenny, that you suggested I ask somebody to volunteer to take minutes, and I managed to forget in that 1 minute time lapse. Would somebody like to volunteer to take minutes? I'm happy to appoint somebody if you don't volunteer.
I can volunteer. I'm not sure exactly if there are any specific rules for taking minutes.
I can work with you to help you figure that out after the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, sorry to interrupt you. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'll invite Member DeMatthew to go next.
Sure, thank you. So I joined because as a educator and member of Albany since Albany citizen, I really want to involve just community members more and organize. I've been part of a lot of different organizations over the years. So I just want to do some more community organizing in Albany. And I'd like to volunteer Member Lewis.
Thank you. So Julian Lewis, I've been in Albany for the last 4 years. My background is in media, both on the advertising side as well as the sales side. And I have a passion for podcasting. And, for me, I'm an avid reader of the Friday emails, but looking for interesting ways in which we can kind of expand upon the communication to the residents of Albany. So I'll pass it to Member Kenny.
Hi, I'm Jack Kenny. I've been on Cmac since it started, and then before that in the ad hoc committee. My dream has always been to have a video production studio in Albany, and barring that, if we can't achieve that, at least to have a way that we can provide courses or classes for the youth and community members to make their own productions and either put them on television or enter them as films in the Albany Film Fest. And I will turn it over to Member Yates.
Hello, thank you. My name is Mariah. Looks like Maria. It's Mariah. Although you can't see it. And you heard it's my last meeting. It's because I had a sudden life change. I'm going to be moving to Berkeley, which was very unexpected. But I was glad to be able to come and contribute once. So thank you. I have to say that my motivation for joining CMAC actually altered a little bit after attending, or not attending, but watching the first meeting. I was appointed shortly after the first meeting had already occurred. Initially, I would say I was very motivated by media accessibility, let's say for seniors and boomers. However, after a little bit more research and thinking about city council meeting attendance in general, and noting that the median age in Albany is 37, I think that the biggest gap in attendance and participation in civic life is probably from the 20 to 40, 45-year-old age group. And so I'm kind of interested in that. I'm motivated in taking an intersectional approach to media accessibility. I think there's a lot of different avenues we could be approaching here. I've been a DJ at KALX, a University of California radio station, for a number of years and involved on a number of committees there. I'm an events planner and have lots of experience in promotions and things dealing with local music. And I'm also motivated by the fun, potentially quirky, potentially creative, community connecting experience that is a local public access station. So all those things motivated me to be here. Thanks. And Chair Winkelstein, did you go yet?
No, I didn't. I didn't expect anybody to call on me. Whoa, I'm so surprised. I was motivated because over the years, I've attended a lot of meetings, city council meetings and other meetings, commission meetings and committee meetings. And I've noticed that very few people attend. And when I ask my neighbors if they knew anything about it, they don't know anything about it. And I've noticed that the city of Albany tends to rely on the website. And so electronic digital access versus actually trying to get out into the community and letting people know what's going on, and also letting them know that it's important that they show up. So that's my motivation, is I want to figure out a way to get the community more involved and what that takes. I have a sister who lives part of the time in New Hampshire, and their city council meetings, the rooms are packed. And I don't know what they do differently. Maybe they just have a lot of controversial issues. I don't know. But I would like to see more people involved, because I think that's what government is supposed to be about. And it shouldn't just be 5 people sitting there making decisions without hearing anybody else. So that's my motivation. And I will call on Member Siegel, because I think you're the last person. I thought I was going to be the last person.
Well, I'm the last person. I was with Jack. We were on this committee before it was a committee, when it was just a ad hoc committee. So from the beginning, I've always been interested in using the media to get the community to express themselves and join in a conversation. And it's pretty much as simple as that. Any way that can happen is fine with me. And along with Mariah, I always wanted it to be a quirky public access station, but that's getting harder and harder. But if anybody wants to help make that, I'm there. That's it.
Great, thank you. Anybody want to add anything or comment before we move on? Member Stapleton Gray.
Yeah, I should acknowledge that I'm only here because my predecessor, Chloe Stapleton Gray, left the committee. She's now a sophomore at Bryn Mawr College, and delighted to be present on campus.
Wait, she's back at school on campus?
She is back at school. They have a very good COVID protocol. I think they had 5 cases diagnosed the whole of this now inbound semester, and most of the class of or most of the student body is on campus.
Wow, that's great. All right, any other comments before we move on? Okay, so the next thing is the approval of the minutes. And do we have any comments or discussion about the minutes? And do people have a chance to read them, the minutes from the last meeting? Have any changes, edits, corrections? No? All right, then I
just wanted to say one thing in doing these minutes. I took a look at the Arts Committee minutes and adopted their format just on my own authority. Anyway, I thought it was well done because for each motion, it spells out who made the motion, who seconded it, and who voted for and against. So as far as being a public record document, I think it's a pretty good format to use.
good advice. Did you hear that? Member to Matthew, you got that?
Hint, hint.
Thank you.
Right.
That's helpful in making.
All right, any other comments? And I need somebody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we
Motion.
approve.
Who made the motion?
I will make the motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a
Member Stapleton Gray,
Aye.
Member Siegel,
Aye.
Member Kenny,
Aye.
Member DeMatthew,
Aye.
Member Lewis,
Aye.
Member Yates,
Aye.
Chair Winkelstein.
aye. So the motion passes. All right, and the next thing is we open up for public comment. Now, Jeremy, you can see them. Am I letting them in or are you letting them in?
I'll let the public in. Everybody should be able to see on your right-hand side, there's panelists and attendees. Looks like we have one attendee. And if that attendee would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any raised hands right now, so I'm gonna give it a few more seconds. Okay, so I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. And then the next thing is announcements. This staff and committee member announcements, reports, and updates of status of previous agenda items. Is there anything that, any announcement anybody wants to make?
When it's appropriate, I can make I've got some items to report from staff.
Okay. Any members have announcements, reports, updates? I think there's a lot to announce at this point. I'm sure we'll have lots in the future. All right, I'll turn it over to you, Jeremy.
All right. So I was just going to mention, since this is our first meeting with everybody here, thank you all for coming. It's great to see a fully staffed Community Media Access Committee. Not a lot has changed since the last meeting that we have, but we still continue. You know, this is kind of the unique set of circumstances for, you know, running the city, you know, during COVID times. So much of our workforce, including myself, is working from home. I'm in Oakland and live streaming all of our public meetings, all of our special events, working a lot to try and kind of share the information specifically about COVID now that vaccinations are happening. So it's a lot of e-news and messaging. I'm the one who assembles all of the content for that Friday newsletter that Julian enjoys so much. So that we've got a couple events coming up. We have a new mayor since January, and she's been involved in a number of community conversation events. And we have one coming up this Thursday where she's bringing members of the police department in for some discussion and Q&A with the community. So we'll be facilitating that. We did one with a panel of doctors and medical professionals back in February, which was attended probably by close to 100 people, asking questions, learning about what the medical establishment has to say about COVID protocols coming back to school. Students entering school was certainly something that was kind of on the top of everybody's mind at that time. Let's see, the other things that I was going to mention is that right now I'm working on replacing the cameras in the council chambers. There was something that Cmac looked at back in 2018. So the funding was approved by the City Council in January. So I'm going to be receiving quotes for 4 new PTZ cameras in the council chambers, and then looking at rebuilding that kind of the technology in that space, looking towards in-person and virtual meetings happening at the same time. We're anticipating sometime within this next year that there will be some meetings that will be held in person, but I'm also anticipating there will be a certain population of the public who will want to, wish to, or choose to attend virtually. So we're trying to figure out how we can do that. The City Council chambers is a small space, and trying to fit a number of people with whatever protocols will be required, keeping the meetings kind of free and easily accessible to the public. That's going to be a challenge and an undetermined challenge, because we don't know, what is going to happen with the Brown Act at the state level, whether or not meetings will be required to be in person at a particular time. But we're kind of planning all of the technology and looking at some of the policy issues now so that we can be ready whenever that happens, sometime between now and September. But with the cameras, we'll be looking at 4 new cameras and a new control system for the cameras, and utilizing the same technology at the community center and at City Hall, so that any of our staff or volunteers who are using our systems, once you get trained on one system, it's the same at the other. Right now we have Sony cameras, 10-year-old Sony cameras over at the community center and a different controller, some different setup, and we have 10-year-old Panasonic cameras and a controller at City Hall. So I want to make them both the same, so we have a little bit more efficiency in our operations. As part of that, we're looking at display issues. So once we go into the council chambers, how are people from the public in a virtual environment going to interface with anybody who is on the dais having a conversation, and the various logistical setups with the technology of feedback, audio, kind of signal chain, what's going to our TV station, what's going to YouTube, how is everybody hearing and seeing each other within the Zoom environment, and kind of looking at all of that. So that's kind of the main focus of what I'm doing right now with our TV channel. We've been doing a lot of bulletin board on our Comcast channel. Since I'm not able to connect our live broadcast from my home in Oakland to Albany, but I've been going in, every couple of weeks to make sure that everything's still working correctly, and that all of our buttons are still able to be pushed over in Albany. Lastly, I want to mention that the city is in the process of changing platforms from Granicus. Granicus has been our primary video meeting agenda archive since 2008, but the service that we have received from that particular vendor has gone down over the last few years. So we have moved to a new company that we just signed the paperwork over these last couple weeks, and over the summer we're going to shift to a new company called PrimeGov, which interfaces directly with our YouTube channel. So the video, in the past, we've had 2 separate video archives, one on Granicus, one on YouTube, which we have to populate with the same information in 2 different places. Now our primary video provider for all of our public meetings will be YouTube, and our meetings and agendas and minutes will all link to that. So it'll be it'll be more of an efficient kind of process on the back end for running our meetings. But there's also some cool kind of display parts of the running the meeting environment, where the PrimeGov software, the chair and the staff will be able to record votes, utilize timers, request public speakers. There's a few kind of bells and whistles that can potentially make our meetings a little bit more engaging and a little bit easier to follow. One of which is a display of agenda items as you progress through the meeting. So as you're talking on, we're on public comment, our display in the council chambers would show public comment. We can have the names of speakers coming up if they choose to share their names. And in the Zoom environment, I could, switch one of these panels out to a display panel that will bring things up in real time. So somebody on the other end of a meeting will be able to follow along wherever they are in the meeting. So those are my staff updates for the time being. Does anybody have any questions? All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Member Kenny.
Not a question. If you have a question for Jeremy, go ahead. I wanted to make an announcement about Albany Film Fest.
Okay, I do have a question for Jeremy. So if it does end up where you're able to do like a combination in-person and virtual attendance of city council meetings, the way the city council meetings were working before in person, the only time a person was recorded attending the meeting is if they walked up to the front to talk. Is that right? The audience was never recorded.
Let's see. Sometimes we cut to the audience if somebody wasn't coming to the mic. There'd be times where we train the cameras on the audience. Usually it would be before a meeting to show that there was people there, and especially if it was we do kind of like a sweep of the audience just to see. And if people did not come up to the podium to speak, that's when we would put a camera to the audience. But typically, you're correct. The only time the public is featured on camera is when they come to the podium.
Yeah, so my question, I guess, has different parts to it. One is that I didn't realize that as a person who attends meetings. And so I think that people should be told that they're being recorded and that recording will be online if they didn't know that, because I didn't know as an audience member that I would show. But the thing I was thinking about is that the disadvantage, the way the meetings are now, is that the city council can't see the people that are speaking. They can hear their voice, but they can't see them. So is that something that's going to be included, or it'll still just be voices? Because it feels very separate. It's really different attending a Zoom meeting than it is being in the city council chamber and seeing the people and having the city council members see you. Just seems like only 50% of the relationship is there right now. So that won't be addressed. Would it still be the same way?
The Zoom webinar, for the way the attendees, they would have to be promoted to panelists. So that would be something for the council to entertain. A number of commissions and committees have raised that question over these last few months since we've been using Zoom webinar. But the technology doesn't allow for people speaking from the audience to show their video unless they're promoted to panelists. That could be something that is decided by the council if they chose to do that. But in the environment, if there was going to be a hybrid virtual and in-person meeting, likely that would be the same. It would be the person's audio as an attendee coming in the same way that we have the existing technology to take call-ins. We haven't done that as practice, but there does exist the technology to be able to call into the council chambers and have the voice come over the PA and then be transmitted out through the broadcast.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I will continue to, I will mention it at meetings because I think it's important. All right, thanks. Member Kenny, get an announcement.
Thank you. Yeah, Albany Film Fest update. Albany Film Fest for 2021 still on hold. Still waiting to get the word on that. But in the meantime, we're doing a monthly series with the Albany Library. And last week we showed a film about Marion Diamond, Dr. Marion Diamond, My Love Affair with the Brain. Thanks to Jeremy, I think it went off really well. We had Q&A with the filmmakers, and he has since put that on the Albany Film Fest website, and it's available for streaming 24/7. So
for the next 3 months.
For the next 3 months, right. Thank you, Jeremy. And I'm sure there's other things coming up. I don't know about them. Maybe Naomi does, but there'll be more films like that featuring filmmakers.
That's great. Thank you. Member Siegel, do you have a?
We also have the movie that we showed the previous month, Lama June, about an Armenian bakery in Los Angeles. That's also still up on the website. And if anybody wants to be super informed, you can subscribe to the Albany Film Fest newsletter through the website, www.albanyfilmfest.org. So that's all I know.
All right. I'm sure that's not all you know.
No, it's not all I know.
Thank you. Yeah, now see, that's an example to me of like, I'm paying attention somewhat, but I didn't know about you could watch the films after the event. Good example of how we need to get the word out to the public with actually pieces of paper or reaching out to small groups or whatever, just to say, but thank you. That sounds great. All right. Any presentations? We don't have any presentations, right? Okay. So the next thing is we go to the discussion and possible action items on matters related to the following items. So we'll go to 6.1. Discuss adding, that's mine. Discuss adding land acknowledgement to the agenda. And that was my idea or a thought I had about adding a land acknowledgement at the very beginning of the meeting. And I actually have an example of a land acknowledgement. If I can do this, let me see. This is just an example. So just, and it's, before I show you, do people have comments or questions about what a land acknowledgement is? Or do you want me to explain more, or do you already know?
I think it'd be helpful to have some context around what it is.
Okay, so a land acknowledgement is just that. It's an acknowledgement of the land that we're on and who it was taken from. And it's just a way of, it's not just a way, it is a way of acknowledging that this is stolen land and whose land it was, and that the people who occupied this land when it was stolen are still here. And so it's also, in my mind, there's a lot of different kinds of land acknowledgements. To my mind, it should be more than just we acknowledge this land and we check a box and we move on, but it's actually acknowledgement that we want to stay aware of that and maybe think about ways that we could take action that would address this, what happened on this land. So the first time I ever heard a land acknowledgement, I was in Canada, and in Canada, it's really common in the last, I don't know how many years, 20 years maybe, for if you go to any kind of conference or anything, they have a land acknowledgement at the beginning, and I had never heard of it until I went there. And now it's becoming more common. You see, there's more places I see that are doing it. I think it's important because of the history of this land. So, so that's what land acknowledgement is. Any questions? Okay, yes. Member Yates.
So are you proposing we develop a land acknowledgement that would be utilized each week or each meeting as the same land acknowledgement each meeting, or are you suggesting that a different land acknowledgement is developed for each meeting?
Oh no, that's a great question. I was thinking of just one that we together work on one, and that one that we think represents what we want to say, but I'm open to, it doesn't matter to me. I could go anyway. So if anybody else has thoughts about that, would want just have one that we agree on, or would you like to have one that was different every time? I mean, basically the people, it's the Ohlone people who were here and we're acknowledging that they were here, or are here, I should say. But it doesn't matter to me. I mean, first of all, we should probably decide whether we would want to do this. I think that would be a good start. And do you want me to show you the sample I have? It's kind of long, so I don't think we wouldn't necessarily do something this long. But I worked on one a while ago for some other thing that I was doing, and I pulled land acknowledgements from various places. I went to a conference and they used one, and I borrowed some of theirs, and then I just went to different native websites, and so I just kind of put one together, and I'll show you what it looks like if I can find it. Let me just see. Okay. So, sorry. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so this is an example of a land acknowledgement. So everybody got really small when I did that. um, any comments or thoughts, or I guess I would really like to hear what people think. Maybe no one wants to start with, maybe I'm the only one that wants to do this. So for me, that's part of the discussion is, do we want to, and it definitely doesn't have to be this long. This is just without any editing and could be a totally different one. Any comments? And I'm not sure I can see everybody now. How do I do that? Or I can stop sharing. I'll just do that. Okay.
I guess the only question I would have is, I love and I'm for the acknowledgement, but is there other actions that we would take into consideration as we do different initiatives through this committee that would kind of address and amplify this message even further?
I would love to see that. And to me, a land acknowledgement is just one piece of it. But I was talking to someone recently, it was one of my students, I think, who was telling me, it was one of my students was saying that where she works at a library, they would have daily meetings, and once a week they would do a land acknowledgement. And then a few months ago, one of the people at the meeting said, I don't know why we're doing a land acknowledgement. Everybody should be acknowledged, one of those statements. And so they stopped doing it. And she told me it just broke her heart that they stopped doing it, because she said it made her feel seen by having, because she was Native American. And so I just realized that even sometimes I think there's a tendency to say, well, it's just token. And, if we don't, it's just on a list somewhere. But to her, it was really important. It was small, that it was all they did, but at least it meant something. So, but yes, I would love to see us incorporate that. But I think that's something we should maybe even talk about with our work adding to our work plan. That would be another possibility.
Yeah, I really like that idea of adding it into the work plan. I think we could even think about how all committees could use kind of a similar idea, or starting every meeting with some kind of land acknowledgement maybe would make sense for most of our public meetings. I don't know how you all feel about that. I've seen some student groups create videos that they reuse for different events. So maybe we could partner with students in Albany or other community members to create something together. That's another idea.
I love that idea. Anybody else comments on this?
I'm in favor of having a land acknowledgement. I think the one you showed us, it is too long for what I would like to see. I'd like to see a basic statement of it, and how we will try to incorporate that into the work of the committee. Just a generalized statement of that. I'm also curious, in my career working in the regional parks, we had a lot of interchange with some of the local tribe people on various issues. And how do we know which tribe that we're talking about for Albany? Has that been researched? Because there are different sections of Albany's, different subsections.
Yeah, there's a map that you can go to. I can send the link out, or what do I do, Jeremy? I give it to you and you send it out?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and then you can look up where you live in, I have to write that down because I'll forget. Send link to map. Yeah, and then people can look up, it's a website. It's great. So yes.
Yeah, but in favor of the sentiment of having the land acknowledgement, and I believe we were considering this for the Albany Film Fest before it went virtual. So it's good timing for that too.
Great. Okay.
Chair, you may also want to connect with the Social and Economic Justice Commission. They're the only advisory body currently that has a land acknowledgement, and we may look at that.
I'm sorry, Jeremy, they don't have a land acknowledgement.
Oh,
right now.
Okay,
This
that's
is
just
the new commission.
the new
yeah.
commission does not. Okay, thank
They're
you.
working on, they're having discussions about it though, because they did. And I have a copy of the one that they were using. Yeah. Before the new commission. Okay, any other comments or what do we do? Do we, I guess, have a motion to see if people, is that, yeah? Anybody want to move that we work on a land acknowledgement? And I like, well, I think just maybe start with a simple one, but then I think I would love to talk more about the idea of a video and getting students involved. I think that would be really cool.
I might also suggest, Chair, that this could be, like was previously suggested, added to the work plan and perhaps developed there. That way, later on, in this meeting, you could articulate kind of what that would be, and then the council could weigh in.
Okay, so rather than vote now whether we want to do it, we put it into the work plan? Is that what you're saying?
Especially since you had also suggested some other kind of social equity aspects, social justice aspects. Perhaps that could all be part of one item or a different subset of items for the committee to look at, especially as it relates to communication and sharing this information with the community.
Okay, that sounds great. Everybody okay with that?
And the chair, you will be sending out that map?
Yes,
that
I will.
correct?
I'm going to send the link to Jeremy, and then Jeremy will send it out. I
Great.
can't send it directly to everybody, I guess. But yeah, it's a cool map.
Are you probably just say it for people? Are you referring to native-land.ca?
Yeah, so there you have the link. But I'll also send it to Jeremy. Okay, yes, I can never remember what I just know it's a link. Okay, so that was easy. And then the next thing on is item 6. Should I ask for public comment on 6.1?
Yes, please.
Okay, is there any public comment on 6.1?
I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Okay. All right, we'll move to 6.2, the meeting schedule. And I also wanted to put this on there because I would like to meet more often than quarterly. I feel like it's hard to get anything done if we just meet quarterly, but that's me. So, and it sounds like Member Lewis that, well, it would be a challenge right now for you, but it depends on the day of the week too, right? And also a challenge for Jeremy because there are no days available or nights. So is it feasible even, Jeremy?
Feasible, yes. It's from my point of view as a staff member, as the one person who's running all of the virtual city meetings, every single city meeting for the duration of the pandemic, it's an extra challenge to try and incorporate a monthly meeting in terms of the preparation and especially now with the workload, I would be disinclined to recommend it, but I would go with the will of the committee. I believe that the reason the committee was working quarterly is the committee had accomplished a lot of what the initial task of the committee was to solidify KALB as a functional operation for the city, and as the committee moved more into trying to look at, the committee didn't have a lot of work to do and we didn't have a full staff, so meeting quarterly wasn't an issue. But now with this new charge, it may make more sense, especially if we're really looking at communications for the entirety of the city as opposed to the studio or kind of like trainings and workshops, those sort of things that we're trying to affect before. That said, a lot of the work that I think that the committee in the past has wanted to do is work that can't be done as a committee. So it's going to be up to, you know, for reasons of the Brown Act, you'll be looking at, you know, subcommittees or volunteers who are going to do the work. So there's pros and cons, you know, for each way. So we may want to have a discussion. I think Monday night is going to be the time, the fourth Monday of the month. We could go and look at other possible dates, but you know, the getting a monthly meeting on the same day at the same time that's not a Monday will be a challenge. And I don't know if that will be possible, given the other public meetings.
Question for Jeremy.
Yeah.
I thought that the change to quarterly from monthly was done by council action. There was a resolution.
That's
So
correct.
If we were going to change it to something else, would we have to go back through the council?
That's correct.
Okay.
So would it be possible to meet every other month? Would that be easier?
That's a possibility too. Perhaps our city clerk could weigh in. I think there were some other committees or advisory bodies that were meeting bi-monthly.
We do have a advisory body that meets bi-monthly, monthly, bi-monthly, and quarterly. Right now, I believe all the dates are taken, except for Fridays, which no one wants to meet on Fridays. And yes, and you do whatever that you guys decide to do. It once you guys have a consensus, it does have to go back to council as a recommendation to the council for the council to decide whether they want to approve you for bi-monthly or monthly.
Okay, so what do people think?
Chair, it looks like our member Yates has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Member Yates, how are you? Oh, there you are. It's because everybody moved on my screen all over.
I will not weigh in on how often the rest of you should continue to meet since I won't be here. It seems unfair, but when I first joined, I definitely was like, how on earth could a committee get anything done meeting once every 4 months? But on this topic, I would like to add to the work plan discussion, if it's not already there, staffing and capacity. I do not think at this time we have the staffing or the capacity to implement anything beyond what is being done right now. So I feel strongly that should be a part of the conversation.
Great, thank you. Any other comments about, Member Kenny?
I think with the new charge that the committee has been given by the city council, I'd agree with Jeremy that there could be a reason to meet more often. And I would be in favor of bi-monthly if that's what it is. I don't think we need to meet every month. I also, in the past, the Cmac has met for an hour, and I would really like to see us get back to an hour. 2-hour meetings way too long. So I would, if we did go to a bi-monthly, I would like to see it for an hour meeting, unless it has to be extended for some other important reason.
Yeah, and I'll just add, because I know it was mentioned of a conflict that I have, but I'm definitely down for bi-monthly as well. My conflict is that I teach starting at 6:30 on Mondays, and so that's where, but it's only from January through May, so it doesn't conflict year round, but it does during this time, and so that would be my only challenge, unless we could start at 5:30 and end at 6:30, as Member Kenny suggested.
I'm with that.
Or could we start at 5? Is there some reason, Jeremy, that we can't continue to start at 5?
No, that we could. I think I'd have to talk with the city clerk, or maybe she can weigh in whether or not council would have to approve the time change. But we try to keep all of the public meetings after 5 o'clock, to make them more accessible to the public. Economic development meets at 5 o'clock on Thursdays on a monthly basis. The CMAC meeting time was 6 to 7, but the committee hasn't met for the better part of a year and a half, and so the last meeting in January there was a lot of coming back to it, getting to know, and then getting to know each other and kind of going over what's been going on for the last year and a half. And now that we have a full meeting body, maybe the chair would want to consider, since we're going to have a regular meeting in April, perhaps another special meeting the month after that. And then the discussion could look at, and then we'll have a better understanding of what COVID is like, as opposed to doing something official right now and waiting for the council to decide.
Okay, so what you're saying is just to sort of put this discussion off until at least April. And then the next meeting after that right now is scheduled. It's January, April,
July and October.
And October, okay. All right, so if we had a special meeting we have a regular meeting in April, and then we could have a special meeting in June, for example.
In May.
In May.
The chair could call a special meeting.
Okay. All right. And then we could just sort of pretend we're not meeting every other month, but meet every other month. We just keep throwing out these special meetings. Member Siegel.
Yeah, I just want to say, I agree. I like the shorter time for a meeting, and I think it makes everybody work more efficiently, because they have to fit it in, and it just, I think it's better. I personally enjoy it. My brain won't go for more than an hour and a half in a meeting and still function well. So great idea. Bi-monthly sounds good.
Okay, great. Member Stapleton Gray.
Yeah, I'll just weigh in to say roughly bi-monthly, an hour-long meeting sounds great. We met twice a month for 3-4 hours on the school board, and I really love not to see that. But if I say an hour every other month, where we are expecting that various projects and whatnot will be pursued by a pair of members and or volunteers, is a fine way to run a year. So.
Great. Yeah, I like that idea. And I do think, once we set up our subcommittees and people know what work they're going to be doing, I think these first couple meetings or this meeting, I mean, there is a lot of people getting to know each other and kind of talking about what's been going on and all that. But I would expect it to get a lot more efficient, or maybe just have, maybe efficient isn't quite the right word, but anyway.
Julie, just to add, the reason why all the advisory body meetings are right now, like Jeremy said, every advisory body, including the city council, now starts at 7. Right. One of the reasons is because it's when we're in person, it's a chance for people to get off work, grab something to eat, and then they'll be able to attend the meeting. If we had meeting earlier, it'd be really hard for people to get off work, right? And commute back home, and then, they may or may not miss the beginning of the meeting. That's the reason why for the evening meetings, and the reason for 5 o'clock for economic development, because most of the committee members there, and also for the people who are interested, there are a lot of business people. And so the intention was so that they can attend right after, business in Albany. So they can attend right after their work.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That makes sense. This is a good example, I think, of trying to sort of get a feel for what the community wants in terms of time and everything. I mean, I don't have any idea what the community would like. And I think that that's important because that's who we're here for. So I would like to know, would they prefer later or is 5 fine, or maybe they want to meet at noon? I mean, I don't know. So I think this is why one of the items I think was doing some sort of survey, and I would like to include that, like what the community wants, that we're here to serve them. So that's a really good point, though. Thank you for that information. So right now, is everybody okay with, do we need to have a motion to
Chair, we need to open it up to the public for
All
any
right.
public comment.
any public comment on item 6.2?
I'm not seeing any.
All right. So is this, do we need to do motion, or the way that you talked about it, it sounds like we could just sort of handle this by a combination of regular meeting and special meeting until we sort of see how things play out?
Yeah, at this point, there's no need to make a formal motion. Perhaps it could be looked at as part of the work plan. It could also be discussed at the next regular meeting in April. I think the city clerk could correct me, but I believe that a time change for a regular meeting, I think that would be a special meeting. So we'd have to look at the change for an April meeting on the fourth Monday if it was to start earlier, but I could work with you separately on that in discussion with the city clerk, and we could figure that out.
Okay.
And then go from there.
Okay, that sounds good. So in keeping with the fact that people like an hour-long meeting, that we still have 2 items, and one of them is our work plan. So when is our work plan due to the city council?
So the work plans are going to be presented to city council over, I think, March and April. April is usually when all of the advisory bodies report or submit their work plans, and then 2 or 3 will come before the council at a time. Last time we did this, I think it went into May. I believe that while we work on the work plan, look at it tonight, we'd probably want to wrap that up in April and finalize it. So it would be dependent on doing a significant amount of work tonight and in April, or calling another special meeting in between. Since the committee's kind of behind the ball, I think a number of other committees and commissions started looking at this before January, and certainly at their January and February meetings.
Yeah, so it leaves, I mean, so what we've got is, I guess we could move to, I'm just trying to figure out how to best use people's time. We could move item 6.3 to the next agenda and work on the work plan right now. Or maybe item 6.3 can just be incorporated into our work on the work plan. What do people think? Just looking at the next 2 items. I just don't want to, I hear you about an hour-long meeting. Obviously, we're not going to have that tonight, but just to make it as short as possible, and also to hang on to Member Lewis, because we're going to lose them in 36 minutes, right?
Chair, you need to call a vote to make a change to the order, if you or make any changes to the agenda.
Okay. So do I need a motion for that, or I just call for, I do need a motion?
You need a motion to change in a second.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to add 6.3 to the work plan.
I second that motion.
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded.
All right, I'll call a vote.
I have a question. If we add it to the work plan, does that mean we're not discussing that tonight?
No, you could discuss that as part of the work plan.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Jeremy, are you talking?
I am. I was pressing the mute button on my Chrome. All right, which doesn't exist. Member Stapleton Gray.
Aye.
Member Siegel.
Aye.
Member Kenny.
Aye.
Member DeMatthew.
Aye.
Member Lewis.
Aye.
Member Yates.
Aye.
Member Winkelstein, or Chair Winkelstein.
So it passes. So we will then okay, so then we'll move on to the work plan. Right. So I also have that somewhere on my desktop ready to be shared. Let me close this. Okay. Okay, so here's the work plan. And this went out, so did everyone get a chance to read it? Because I know it went out as an attachment. So really, when we look at the work plan, I've lost Jeremy. I mean, I know you're there, but I can't see you. Let me see. Do this. Sorry. Okay, there you are. Do we need to go through, I mean, do we need to go through what the recent initiatives and accomplishments since they're already passed? I mean, what is the city wants from us is a new work plan or an amended work plan, right? Or an updated work plan. We don't have-
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
So what I did here is I just took the previous work plan and changed the dates and made a few tiny modifications. What we're going to want to look at is the accomplishments over the last 2 years, which is going to be a little bit of a challenge, being that 1 year was COVID and was different, and the other, basically most of the year, with the exception of one meeting, the committee didn't meet. KALB continued its operations. Film Fest continued. There's been a number of changes that as staff I can add for kind of the KALB operation that we can add in here. But I think what primarily the council will be interested in looking at is what are the plans going forward? What will the committee be looking at, and how will the committee address those issues? Specifically, they'll be looking at the communication portion, which was just kind of recently assigned to the committee in January. So I can certainly work with the chair to update the kind of the staff portion, but maybe right now a good way forward is to have a general discussion about some of the items you want to look at. Is there anything that should go, should stay in? And then the chair and staff can provide an updated draft with the updated information that we talk about tonight, and then have the committee at the April meeting look at everything in detail with the updated pros and cons, updated descriptions of all of the various items on the work plan.
So one of the, thank you, Jeremy. I just wanted to, okay, so in the thing that we decided to add to the work plan, item 6.3 was creating subcommittees. So if we don't do that tonight, nothing will happen between now and the next meeting.
Well, a subcommittee can be created if there is a particular task that needs to be done in the interim.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps a subcommittee could be to flush out some of the items on the work plan, or to solicit additional information. Looks like I'm going to have to change the battery on my camera here in a second. But I don't believe that and Anne can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if we necessarily have to have a vote to create subcommittees. I believe that the committee can create informal subcommittees to do some portion of the work outside of the regular meeting.
Yeah. So if that's true, then it seems like that makes it easier, because people could see what appeals to them, what either is on here that they would like to work on, or isn't on here that they would like to create information about, so that it could be on here. And people could work by themselves or work with one other person in a subcommittee.
Yeah, so long as we don't have a quorum, a subcommittee it has to be less than a quorum. So a subcommittee could be up to 3 members, but I think it would be easiest to do subcommittees of 2.
Oh, that's right. I forgot we're 7 people, not 5 people. Yeah. Okay. So we could have up to 3. Okay. So I guess I just like to get a feel for what stands out about this. What do you think is good you'd like to keep? What would would you like to change and what would you like to add? I mean, for me, I would like to add more detail about how we communicate with the community that isn't through a digital access, right? Because to me, and I would love to be on a subcommittee with somebody who wanted to talk about that. And then I know another topic that came up, and I don't know if it's on here, was the idea of doing some sort of survey that came up at the last meeting. And that could be another subcommittee of trying to figure out how the community gets information, how they would like to get information, what they know, what they don't know, what's important to them. I don't know, whatever the subcommittee decides to put on the survey, and then people could report back in April. Those are just off the top of my head. So anybody have anything that stands out about this that they would like to comment on, add to, track?
Chair, I see Member Yates' hand is up.
Oh, good. I'm sorry. I need to figure out a way of seeing everybody while I'm sharing my screen. Or do I need to keep sharing my screen? Does everybody have it in front of them?
We could take it down for a moment and then bring it back up if we need to.
Okay, good. Because then I can see everybody. Oh, much better. All right. All right. Good. Yes, please.
I would like to make a number of suggestions. Okay. So looking at our 2021 to 2023 policy review initiatives, the first is, the first is keep the film festival sustainable. I support keeping that initiative. Examining the notes on it or determining a plan of action regarding that, I feel like is, if that is a conversation, as it is with all of these, that I think can happen at the next meeting once we have actually established what the initiatives are for the work plan. And it's my perception that that is kind of the important thing. So the first one, keep the film festival sustainable. I support that. The second one, Cmac will encourage and support more Albany-related programming and community-produced programming, both documentary and narrative. I want to suggest modifying this so that it reads both documentary and narrative with a focus on engaging Albany's diverse community. This will meet the city's goal that they put forth for us, and it will also give us room to address the conversation we kind of started with the land acknowledgement. Next, through the use of live streams, Cmac will support KALB to provide a series of workshops and trainings related to production equipment, filmmaking, and digital storytelling. I think that sounds super cool and awesome, and I want to suggest that we strike it as an initiative because I do not think that we have the capacity for that right now. Again, these are just my takeaways. Instead, I think that energy and that same kind of will could be moved into the next initiative, which is support youth media education in Albany. I suggest keeping that. That one leaves room, I think, to achieve some of the same goals, while also connecting us with another organization that will be helping to implement them, thus easing some of the burden of staffing and work off of Jeremy. And lastly, I would like to add an initiative that is to examine staffing and capacity at KALB, looking at past accomplishments as listed at the start of this. Right now, KALB took over responsibility for all website maintenance, all electronic newsletters. Jeremy just mentioned he's running all of the committee and council meetings, and that he's the only staff person right now. So also, as mentioned above, as accomplishments, it says we have a temporary part-time production specialist and temporary part-time production assistant. It's my impression those people don't exist anymore. I mean, I'm sure they exist on a temporal plane somewhere, but not as part of KALB. So I think that we need, like, again, the details of these things I think can be worked out, but we need a full-time communications staff member or something. None of these things are going to happen miraculously. Oh, and then lastly, add, I didn't even write it down, add, develop and implement, oh, here it is, develop and implement a community outreach program. And so that is the thing that would be an ongoing conversation. How do we do that? Is it print? Is it this? Is it that? But in terms of the work plan, that would be my plan. So those were a lot of things. That's it.
That's great. Thank you. Is that true, Jeremy? It's just you, there are no help at all?
Yes and no. We have temporary part-time staff, but there was during COVID times, we're slowly bringing back some of our temporary part-time staff, but some of the people who were working with us, usually those are college students or people, high school students, sometimes it's a wage job for $12 to $15 an hour, and it's temporary part-time. So the people who were available a year and a half ago working with us may or may not be available when we come back. So that is something we'll have to look at. We've had other we've had a variety of staff people over the years that have performed different roles within KALB. We did back in 2010, 2011 have a 75% staff member who was kind of 3/4 time, but since then we have not. That was one of the last hires and the first laid off position that the city had back in the economic crisis. Back what Jack, maybe you can remind me. I think that was 2011.
Yeah,
something like that.
Right after the first film fest.
Correct. So that is something that council can look at. We, in these last 3 or 4 years, what I was doing with technology would be in conjunction with other departments. So with special events, I would liaison with recreation and provide all the technical assistance. For the public information officer, I'd work with the PIO and the communications team. But currently, the city doesn't have a designated PIO. That position is with our assistant city manager, who is also the director of the recreation department. So there's a lot of shared hats right now. So as we look towards more communications, the committee certainly could weigh in on a public information officer for the city and what role, as it relates to the communication charge from the council, how the committee can look at that particular position and what that means as kind of the forward-facing messaging from the city, because in the last 4 or 5 months, since that particular staff member left, it's been difficult for me to assume all of those responsibilities as a PIO. That's a very specific job for the city that, my background is in kind of the technology infrastructure portion, and all of the communications work that I do is not my expertise. There's a lot of on the job. Yeah, sure, I can do that. Mine is more kind of graphic arts and formatting. So if people send me the text, I would love to deliver it. But in terms of writing the copy, I will format it with the correct fonts and the correct color scheme. But creating the actual content, that's not something that I necessarily have the capacity to do at this point.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
And I also wanted to add real quick. I submitted some original content to KALB at the end of January or beginning of February, and I don't know if it ever aired or anything like that. So, as part of that, it seems like we don't have. Did you get the bingo show?
I did not. So this is the first I'm hearing about it. So let's connect afterwards, and then we can look at that, because even if this will be your official last meeting as a committee member, certainly you can continue participating as a member of the extended public, and if you have a connection to an Albany resident in the future, you can submit your content for airing on KALB.
Great, thank you. So any other thoughts on this? Member Lewis, do you want to, before we lose you, would you like to speak up?
Yeah, I guess first and foremost, Member Yates, thank you for contributing all that before you're departing. And I absolutely love the idea of combining the trainings and workshops with the youth media education. And I also think that that could feed into the temporary staff as like a feeder system as they're learning, getting on the job experience and potentially taking on different roles. So I love that. I am a huge supporter of the economic development and creating promotional items through communication, whatever form that lives in, for the local businesses, to really making sure that they are thriving. So if there is a subcommittee around that specifically, I'd love to be involved with that. And I will just note that from other forms of communication and expanding what we're currently doing, as Jeremy knows, podcasting is what I do for my 9 to 5. And so production, not necessarily, and hosting, I guess, but I'd be happy to bring that to any of these different things, including the education where I can help out. But I think for me, the economic development, I'd love to create a subcommittee around that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I would love to hear more about the podcasting. I would really like to see that brought to somehow that becomes part of what we do in Albany, especially bringing in the young people. I think that sounds really cool. All right, so other thoughts about this? I know it's a lot of information, and so just kind of what, I guess my interest in particular would be if we could finalize some subcommittees so that we have people are able to go out and do something when we're not meeting. That would be, that people express interest in something that sounds appealing to them. So far, we have Member Lewis interested in economic development subcommittee. That includes businesses and what I didn't write fast enough. So, and podcasting, but
yeah,
kind of a highlight of like economic development in terms of supporting businesses in Albany. And are you thinking of particular, like I know there are very few businesses owned by people of color in Albany, and I would be great to have, are you thinking sort of that in terms of increasing diversity and looking at, or are you thinking just of the businesses that are already here, or?
I think that with the businesses that are here and making sure that we're amplifying like what they offer and making sure people are aware in different forms of communication. And then, where we do have vacancies, like attracting diverse businesses to come in and set up shop here, hopefully from people who live in the area, or even bringing people in to set up shop here.
Okay.
Chair, if I can add in a couple of things. We do have an existing AV apprentice program that I started many years ago when I was doing more youth education with the city, that now is run by the recreation department, and that is indeed a feeder system for potential staff where we work with high school students and they apply for the position, but it's more geared towards special events and kind of event production. So it's cameras as it relates to filming something that's happening in the city, concerts in the park, dinner with Albany, any of the special events, and then having a crew of people to help set up and take down. So perhaps we could look something more in the lines of communications. We have a long history of working with the school district, especially with their ROP video production program. And it may be worth looking at our connections with the high school and potentially the middle school again, around some of these issues. In the past, it takes a lot to do video production, takes a lot to bring in students. If there isn't a financial incentive or a credit incentive, there needs to be some sort of formal mechanism. The AV apprentice program would get certificates and be acknowledged by the council at the end of their participation, but perhaps the committee would like to look at something a little bit more substantive. Internships perhaps could be looked at, financial stipends, those sort of things. Trying to get youth to come for pizza or for their college, resume builder, it's not really a reliable way of ensuring participation. I'd also say, kind of to Julian's point about economic development, we've really looked at Albany Film Fest to kind of touch on all of those things in terms of bringing the downtown community together, building media education for youth, and making Albany a destination, kind of a cultural destination for the Bay Area. That said, one of the things that we need to, that I think this is probably the best time to clarify, is that committees should not really be involved in running events. And it may make sense to remove the Film Fest as something that the committee is officially involved in. And that can be, kind of put back towards staff now that the Film Fest is actually its ongoing activity with the city. So we may want to discuss that. And maybe that clears some space in the Cmac work plan if we can look at some of those other items that the Film Fest was delivering kind of over these last 10 years in terms of economic development and youth and education. Perhaps we can kind of clear that space so it's not confusing, about a committee, running an event, which the committee shouldn't be running an event. Because it's kind of this weird gray area that we've had to contend with. Perhaps the committee can make some recommendations to formalize the film festival as some other, we've been looking at the Friends of the Albany Film Fest, or, some sort of formal outside volunteer organization, so that it continue growing and kind of receiving that community participation, but the CMAC is not necessarily somehow responsible for the film festival.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So other thoughts or comments about what Jeremy just said, or yes.
Having been on the school board prior, I strongly suspect that over the past year, we've seen an awful lot of content creation being done by high schoolers, middle schoolers, et cetera, outside of studios because they necessarily have to do it. One of my primary interests has been digital access, and I appreciate the access to other media, non-digital, et cetera, as an aspect of what the committee should care about. But we also know that you've got 3,000 plus families within the AUSD community who are necessarily having to be online doing Zoom, et cetera. I would love to know what the district knows about that community. I hope they're doing technology surveys. I hope they are, aware of resources. I hope they're pushing them out there to those who haven't got them. While I was on the school board, the high school was piloting, giving Chromebooks out to folks who needed them. And then the library, having been on the library board, a library is also another digital on-ramp of sorts. There are still people who I think go down and hang out to use the Wi-Fi at the library. While I was on the school board, one of the conferences saw presentations by folks like Coachella Unified, where the city and the school districts have a collaboration. Businesses are posting information about access to Wi-Fi on their platforms on behalf of students or for students. The school district is promoting those businesses who have connectivity for students in a collaboration. So we might look at business not just to promote Albany businesses, but potentially to collaborate on getting connectivity for folks who lack it. The news has 400 or 500 people down at Golden Gate Fields, which is split across Berkeley and Albany, who came down with COVID because they're all living in dormitory environments in a not particularly well-supported ecosystem down there. I know from the district, we had a lot of transient students who were here seasonally with families down at Golden Gate Fields. All those populations might be reached out to by the city, by the school district, by the library, by businesses on behalf of these parties. So that's an area that I think is greatly of interest. I guess it kind of fits into city outreach, but it's not just, say, promotion of cities or acquiring content related to the cities and the business, et cetera. It's looking for collaborations on digital access and other media, but the internet is where I come from, so that's a particular interest to me.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that, I mean, we could combine those, but it seems like that digital equity, which I'm also really interested in, is, could be a separate subcommittee. The economic development and the digital equity, they could be joined. What gets gathered could be put together ultimately, but I think it might be more efficient maybe to look at them separately. I don't know.
And you can have digital equity and access to information apart from, should everyone be on the internet. We
Right.
should be able to get the word out through a variety of media.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so I'm just trying to think of kind of titles of, right now we have of subcommittees, economic development, and if we just called that digital equity for now, it doesn't take into, digital equity definitely doesn't take into account, other ways of communicating with people, but it would be a start. And I like the idea of like the survey that you mentioned. That would be something, does the school district, have they surveyed who the people are that are using it? What is their other access points, and what are their barriers, and how are they dealing with those, and all that stuff. So anybody else, other people, in terms of something that really speaks to you that you would like to, either these two things that have already been mentioned, or something else that stands out for you?
I might also mention the desire from the community to have some aspects of local journalism covering stories. That's been something that's been brought up in the past. Right now, a lot of the current information, the city is not really in a place to provide that sort of coverage, but perhaps there's a way that Cmac can, liaison with the university or with the school district or, local citizen journalists. There's a few Facebook groups that share information, but then you have to be on Facebook if you want to see what's going on, or, the city's receive the city's communications, but that's, one perspective on a lot of issues. So perhaps there's a way that Cmac can advocate for the community to be involved in that storytelling about what's happening here.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I know that I've talked to several people who are frustrated about, the journal we used to have a newspaper that sort of covered it, and now that it doesn't. And so it's more these online things that may or may not be accurate or welcoming.
Yeah. Do you? I don't see. I only publish to Nextdoor in Albany, but I know that there are a lot of stories about what happens on Nextdoor in Albany, and I don't know if that's necessarily the place that everybody wants to get their news and information.
Yeah, Nextdoor, I don't do it. I did for a short time, but I don't. Yeah, there seems to be a lot of issues, I think, around the attitudes and the people, and I'm not comfortable with it, but I think a lot of people use it. And other interests that people, yes, great, good.
Yeah, just to bring back item 6.3 that we moved to this work plan, maybe we could make a committee that's called like print media committee, or some kind of physical outreach. In the previous meeting, we talked about maybe posters or some kind of visual thing for like Solano and the BART tracks, areas that are really populated and with heavy foot traffic. So maybe creating a subcommittee. And also I just was curious about how the process of subcommittees work. Once we have a subcommittee, how do we get started, and how do we, in terms of the Brown Act, how can we meet? What are we allowed to do? Just wondering about those details.
Yeah, so Jeremy knows all the answers, but just from what I've been asking around, the same thing. And so as long as it's 2 or 3 people, then you can meet and talk to each other about the same item, but you can't then, like, remember at the training where you couldn't like A and B couldn't talk, and then B couldn't turn around and talk to C, to tell this what A and B, like that. So as long as you keep it within yourself and then bring it back to the meeting, right? Is that right, Jeremy?
That's correct.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to get these subcommittees formed before we disband, because it seemed like this is an opportunity for people to get some work done and then come back and report on what they've done. So I want to be on every single one of the subcommittees, so that's probably not good. So so far we've got a print media or something print, sort of non-digital, we could call it, like, or something. And then we have the journalism, citizen or local journalism, citizen journalism. We have economic development, and then we have digital equity. Those are the 4 topics that have been brought up. Anybody else? The other people haven't spoken up yet. Do you have any thoughts, suggestions, interests? I don't know. Can I call people by their first name? Like, it's so hard for me to keep remembering. Yeah, Member Kenny.
Thank you, Chair Finkelstein. I just wanted to thank Member Yates for going through all of the work plan so thoroughly. And I have to say, I agree with one exception to her point of view on the different topics that we should cover. The one exception is about the workshops for the community as far as storytelling and video production. We've had some of those, and we've been able to partner with the recreation department and also with some community volunteers to put on those classes. I would hate to see the older part of the community left out and just focus on youth training. I think they're both important. And I think the issue for us has been getting the word out on these classes and workshops, and that's what we need more of. So I would like to keep that in. Also, regarding the Film Fest, I think it still should be in. Maybe we talk about a transition toward a new structure as part of that, but it does meet some of the goals of Cmac as far as community outreach and engaging diverse community and economic development. So I personally would like to see that in there, and I would like to be on a subcommittee to talk about those issues if we keep them in the work plan. So it would be both Film Fest and the workshops that would be set up. I would like to work on those 2 areas.
Thank you. So we're going to end up with like 7 subcommittees and 7 members.
Everyone gets one.
Yeah, everybody gets one.
All right. We haven't heard from Member Siegel. Do you have any? Have we? None of those committees sound good to you? Or would you like to do any, sound like something you'd like to be part of?
They all sound great. I don't think I want to be part of them right now, but I could change my mind.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And who else haven't we heard from? Is that it? I think. All right, so we need to figure out how we're going to do the subcommittees.
Chair, I could also offer, I could certainly consult and meet with each subcommittee individually to kind of kick off the work. I think the idea would be to create these subcommittees now so that over this next month, the subcommittees can come back and report. And then I think another subcommittee may be some aspects of the work plan, or each one of the, so, or if you're going to organize it, these are all aspects of the work plan, and then the assembly will happen at the April meeting where all the details are put together. So perhaps there's a way of, looking at these subcommittees for this period of the next couple of months while the work plan is going. So these are temporary work plan subcommittees, and then formalize them at some point in the future for the ongoing work, especially as it relates to volunteers and working with the community or any sort of ongoing engagement that would need to happen for that type of work. That's always been something that's been a challenge for the committee, and with aspects of the Brown Act is getting large groups of people together with a few community members to do a certain thing. That's not something that is permissible. But what the subcommittees can do is kind of help develop what that structure will be so that the volunteers can work in conjunction with staff or work towards certain events outside of the Brown Act.
Okay, that sounds good. So
I have to
I
head to
know you
class.
do.
Do we have to do a motion for me to leave? I don't remember exactly. No.
We do not, no. I think the chair can excuse you, and then you probably will be assigned to the economic development portion of.
Yes, yeah, you
Awesome.
may be well, we'll see how many people end up on your committee or how many things we combine.
Yeah, let me know. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, you're
Okay.
excused.
Thanks. Bye all.
Okay, so so we have economic development. Is there any way we could combine some of these things? Like, how about digital equity and, didn't I see the word digital in two different things? Looking at my notes. Well, digital equity and economic development were kind of together, but it was different. That's right, we say it was different.
Yeah, though I was going to suggest if there were going to be two subcommittees, I'd love to be on both, because there is somewhat of a sort of a quid pro quo thing. And as they saw in Coachella, where you had the businesses supporting access by the students in return for promotion of within the community.
Okay, so that would be digital equity. Okay, so, all right, and economic development, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right, and then we have the subcommittee that Jack suggested, Film Fest, and then the workshops. That the workshops are like the storytelling, which it seems to me like, one thought I had while you were saying that is that you could have youth and seniors working together, and for the storytelling, like the youth listening to the seniors telling their story, or the other way around. You could bring them together.
Sure. I mean, that could all be combined into one unit, talking about education or training available to the community.
Okay,
And it could be to youth, could be to seniors, could be to a mix.
right. So that would, you're calling it training because people are learning about storytelling. Is that why you're calling it training? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
If I could also add, that does fall into digital equity to a certain extent.
Okay.
I would say the digital equity, as I was seeing it, is much more like access as opposed to content. And I would raise the issue when I joined the school board after we had already axed all of our continuing education programs in Albany. It just gone. And if we focus on content creation and training and learning to be a digital storyteller, say, I would love to see that at the schools, but also at all ages. There's a lifelong learning sort of a thing. So the charter of something that was more like digital equity of content as opposed to digital equity of access, where I'm sort of focused on the latter, and you may be more the former.
Yeah, that's a good point. And in fact, access, actually, Community Media Access Committee, it's right there in the name.
Yeah, and that's a big interest of mine. So I'd be interested in working with the digital equity part of that with you, Ross. Okay, so then we have member Kenny talking about Film Fest and the content. Okay, so digital, I mean, the training workshop. Okay, so that's education, storytelling, whatever, film fest. That's what you're interested in.
Yes.
Anybody else would like to work with member Kenny on that? Or the other options that we've got up so far, or I'm open to other people bringing up things, digital equity, and then economic development, and local journalism, and the print non-digital, and that's DeMatthew, right? Remember in DeMatthews, yeah. Okay. So
One other part of kind of what you're looking at with non-digital could also potentially be digital signage, which is kind of obviously it's digital, but it'd be something more in place for communications, and perhaps that, looking at it more broadly, in somehow as it relates to kind of information in place. As I know that was brought up at the last meeting about kiosks and displays and posters around town, perhaps digital signage can fall into that, even though it's an electronic medium, but it's something else that people don't necessarily need to have access, and they can enjoy that content as they arrive to it.
Yeah, I like that idea, but and also can the digital signage, there's digital signage that can talk to you, right? So if you can't see it, it could talk to you. You either use a smartphone or you press a button or something, some way that it, like at the bus stops where you can press a button and it tells you. So for people who are blind or low vision.
Certainly a subcommittee could look into all the different aspects of that. Another part of that may be kind of connecting with planning and zoning, transportation, about wayfinding, around the city. That's, that sort of signage around town is an aspect of communication, and that perhaps this committee could, address. Like I said, one of the parts of what I do is with the city is the branding and the colors, the graphics, the consistency across the board, and perhaps there's some aspect of that in communications, general communications to the city, so that people understand where they are and where they're going.
Yeah, no, I that would be great, and I really like the idea of, that is part of our diverse community, or people with low vision, people who can't hear, or part of the deaf community. There's a lot of different ways that people communicate and gather information, and we're kind of assuming that it's the way that we do it, but there's a lot of different ways. People on the spectrum, there's just like a whole range of ways that people gather information. I think it'd be good to be aware of that. I'm all for being on that committee too. See, so far I put myself on almost every committee. So,
Chair, it looks like Chair Siegel.
Sorry.
Member Siegel has.
Yes, go.
Hi, yeah. Clearly, I don't want to be on a committee right now, but I have opinions. And one of the things I'm thinking of right now is who is giving out, who's the central person that is writing, who is responsible for coming up with the message that will be disseminated in all these ways, because it's the message that's actually important. That's the first thing you need before you can get it out. And then second to that is the avenues for dissemination. So I know Jeremy was talking about a information officer. So if in lieu of an information officer, where are you getting your information? I just think that's something that needs to be considered by all of these subcommittees. And I don't know the answer. I'm just raising the question.
Great. It's a great point. Member Kenny?
Yeah, because we talked about that at our last meeting, is not only getting the word out about public meetings in Albany, but how to capture people's attention so that they want to attend. So I think that goes to what Naomi is saying, developing the message to reach people so that we can encourage more participation. Yeah. And I would like to be part of the subcommittee that's dealing with the non-digital communication. I've been talking to some of my groups and getting some feedback from them about ways that we can improve non-digital communication. So I'd like to share that.
Great. Okay. So far we have the non-digital communication, and that is Member Kenny and Member DeMatthew and potentially me, unless somebody else wants to be on it. And then we have the economic development, and so far we just have Member Lewis on that, unless somebody else wants to be on that. And then we have the digital equity, which is Member Stapleton Gray and me again, unless somebody else wants to do it.
Well, and my suggestion there was that maybe you and I and Member Lewis all collaborate on essentially digital equity and economic development, okay, which has a nice catchy DEED acronym, because there is somewhat of a two-way street and in terms of engaging the business community for greater access for everybody else.
Okay, digital equity, and how did you get the DE, digital equity and economic development?
Development.
Okay. Deed, indeed. I have to think of something that starts with an I.
Information.
All right, information deed. Yeah, indeed. We'll call ourselves Indeed. Okay. All right. So is everybody on a committee that wants to be on a committee, and a subcommittee, and you know who's on the committee with you? And Member Siegel is not ready to do that, correct?
If the subcommittees are two, additional members can always be invited to join, much like what Member Stapleton Gray was alluding to. So if it can be an official subcommittee of two people, and then somebody else, such as Naomi, could join were she available or had the interest or.
Okay. All right. No pressure. All right. So then what they can do is people, Jeremy, I don't have people's emails addresses except for Member DeMatthew. So you can let people, how does that work?
I could start the, I'll confer with city clerk, and then likely the communication will be done via email with the communication information shared for each committee. So I'll start it. And one of the things that I've done, say for Film Fest, is I can use our city's Zoom account, and I can set those meetings up for you or help facilitate, any of that. Even if I'm not involved, at least I can, set up the time and the place as if that was the room that you were going to meet at in person. You're certainly welcome to communicate on your own, exchange phone numbers and emails once I do the initial contact to set that up. It doesn't have to be through the city's Zoom account. You can use your own means of meeting and create your own schedules for the subcommittee, so long as it doesn't exceed a quorum.
Okay. All right. So are we clear on who's on what committee and what they are?
I do have one last question just about the youth media education. Is that still a separate committee, or did we merge that?
That's a really good question.
If we didn't merge it yet, I was gonna say we could add it to the signage and communications group, because my idea was it could also be we could work with schools, like students, to make some of those signs and distribution, and then there's maybe other projects too, but that could be one of them.
Okay, that's fine with me. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Jeff?
I'm all for that, because it's really about promoting these. So the way we can do it, non-digitally or digitally, is all the best.
Yeah.
I had a question for Jeremy. In looking through some of these items in the work plan, and it has things that were done in the past, we're going to try to get rid of all those old references, right?
Right. I'll clean those up and bring those up to date for the next meeting. I can add in what KALB has been doing and what staff has been doing. And a lot of that work is ongoing, but also, obviously, during COVID, we haven't had any public events where we were providing live sound and lights and those sort of things.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. All right. So, so are we clear on what those committees are?
There's a couple of things that we didn't cover, specifically kind of the information gathering part, where any sort of public survey or information gathering to the public, if you want to bring that into the committee, that probably should be part of the work plan, and so that the committee could let council know that the committee would like to do kind of some very specific outreach to get that information to determine some aspect of what the committee is going to do. Certainly each subcommittee can do some informal outreach, but perhaps this is a time for the entire committee to do something very formal and specific out to the community. I mean, any information that the committee knew 5 or 10 years ago about digital digital communications and media access in the Albany community is different now, right? So perhaps utilizing the city's existing means through social media, the newsletters, e-notify, the website, and in addition to print, how does this committee gather the information that needs to help the council make better decisions about these issues?
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is that I like the way that ended up. That whole that. So what you're saying is that we could help them gather information so they can do a better job of meeting the needs of the community, because we've gathered this, help them know what the community needs, because that's what you're saying. Is that?
I think so. And I think that also kind of addresses part of what Naomi was saying earlier about, where does the messaging come from? Because, that's a critical component, in addition to the means, what does the community hear?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeremy, do you write all of the emails?
No, I it's a shared, we request staff to submit all of the content and I assemble it. Some of the key things I'll write in conjunction with the assistant city manager. So that is something. So, and some of the content, that we're pulling from the state, is just a matter of kind of revising or updating. But typically the staff submits their content and I assemble it and maybe do a proof. And
You
then
assemble all the emails?
you mean for the are you talking about the e-news?
No, I mean, like I get the police update one, I get the Cmac one, I get the arts committee one, I get the
No.
city council meeting,
No, that's provided through e-notify. So different staff members who are in those departments will put those together and then it goes out to a distribution list. But I oversee the entirety of the website, so I kind of, maintain the cohesiveness of all those different sections.
Okay. I guess I just want to voice one more time that I feel like the conversation around messaging, like how, like literally what's going to be written, how is it presented, is the flyer blue or green, and which color motivates people to spend money or buy a burger. I heard a lot of concerns voiced at the last meeting by Jeremy, and it was kind of echoed again today that, he's not a marketing guru. He's tech savvy and electronically savvy. And I just feel like that's another argument for, and it'd be awesome if high school students are willing to help put that stuff together, because they'll probably have lots of graphic design skills and know-how. But I just want to put in one more little push that I think what we need here is a marketing and communications person. Like if the city is sincerely concerned about reaching people, then we need to pay for a person who knows how to do that. It's a skill set and it's not something that any of us can take on in our spare time. I strongly doubt. So just another pull for that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I agree with that. And I think that part of the work that we're going to be doing is helping, if that were to happen, which I think would be great. And we could talk more about what that would look like. But it's definitely to me, it's the message, and then the medium is very important. And that's part of what I feel like the city is lacking right now, because there's just not enough staff. Member Siegel.
I just want to also say that since we're talking about messaging, I completely agree with that, with what Member Yates said. I completely agree with that. And we also need to remember that I think as what this committee also likes to encourage is avenues for the community to express what they want to express through all the various media that we have, the cable, videos, writing, art, whatever they've got, that also needs to be an open channel, not just going out, but coming in, whatever that means.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. That's a really good point, that it's both ways. Yeah.
Yeah. And historically, we have not been able to get people to do that. So if anyone can think of something that will encourage people to tell us what's on their minds, that would be great.
I think they are the same. I still see them as the same thing, like to get people giving us their input, to get them putting in creative content. They have to, that they can do
That
so.
they can. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that we,
Yeah.
and that it's welcomed. I think that's
Yeah.
one of the other issues, is that it's not always clear in the city that people's input is welcome, and
Yeah.
it's unwelcome. And so I think that I think the more that people can understand that actually that's something we want, is that the city wants, is important. I'm really glad that you both brought that up. I think it's a really good point. So so Jeremy, can we say that once we make sure we know who's on what committee, and we're all going to communicate that that's enough to do on the work plan for now, and we could then kind of bring all this information back again in April, and then sort of that'll be our meeting. We won't introduce ourselves again. And we won't talk about line acknowledgements again necessarily. So anyway, so that we can really focus on the work plan, since it sounds like we need to finalize it.
Yeah, what would happen is that you and I would, I think what you would be able to do is kind of coalesce some of this stuff in that document. I'll put in the KALB portion of that information, and then we could distribute that draft work plan incorporating these different sections that we've detailed, and then the committee can go through this and bring their respective subcommittee information into each one of those items to assemble the work plan at the next meeting.
Okay, that sounds good. So we got so many things added to so many committees that I just, how is our minute taker? Are you clear on what the committees are now at this point?
I believe so. I'm gonna double check. I guess I guess my one question is KLB. Was that originally a committee that is now part of another one? I see just on the work plan
that can just be staff.
Okay, staff.
If anybody has any strong feelings about what KALB can be, perhaps with regard to the studio space or the ongoing operations, I'd be more than happy to speak with them. We could set that up as a meeting. If anybody has some strong feelings, we could just meet directly. It doesn't have to be a subcommittee.
And same with anything related to the film festival. That's been moved to staff.
I think Jack had a good point about how the film festival, perhaps what we detail in the work plan is a transition, and then how the film festival is addressing a number of those issues as part of the strategic plan for the city council. And then Jack, does that seem like a good idea to you?
Yeah, and we can just talk about some of the things that we may be planning for future years, like the Social Justice Award, for example.
Okay, so am I? No, I'm not. Okay. All right. So, what do you think? You got a list for us?
And we can always consult the video afterwards if there's any ambiguity.
Yeah, I've got what I've got, but I wanted to check with Member Matthew to see if we're on the same page in terms of.
Yeah, thank you. I think it should be all there, hopefully.
Okay, so we have digital equity and economic development, right? Is that what you have as a committee? Just trying to confirm what our committees are. And then print and non-digital media committee.
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, we have two committees with just a lot of our subcommittee ideas that were merged. So we just have two separate committees now. Is that what you have?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so I have economic development got mixed in with digital equity, and so that would be Member Lewis and Member Stapleton Gray, and possibly me, unless somebody else wants to do it. And then I have to write all this down. Okay. And then we have non-print. I mean, we have print, non-digital media committee, and Jack, because I can't read my own writing. Something communication. Equitable, something.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we just changed it to basically communication, since we'll do digital, and also youth. We have youth education in there, and that would be Member Kenny, me, and you as well in that committee.
And which one is that? That's the print, non-digital.
Yeah, digital and non-digital and youth communications.
I think it was also, my idea was it was including the other workshops for people other than youth as well.
Right,
That-
right. And
Those are all combined.
right. So
Yeah.
maybe we could call it something like intergenerational communications. I don't know what you think. Just throwing things out there.
You know, I would say that the name isn't as important as the people, and then figuring out who's going to be meeting when, and then coming back with some information to fill out the work plan. I think, you know, if you leave it somewhat general, then you can do that work and come back to the next meeting with substantive information to share with the rest of the committee.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I just have too many notes and, okay, so, all right. So who's working together with, I need help here. I wrote notes all over the place and I'm trying to figure it out. So I agree with you. We just need to figure out. So Member Kenny and Member DeMatthew and I are working on something, which
Right.
uh,
We're in the communications, and then Member Stapleton Gray and Member Lewis and Member Winklenstein are also in economic development and digital equity.
okay, that's okay, good. All right. So that was Lewis, Stapleton Gray, and me.
Right.
Okay, good. That's all I needed was to know. All right. Is that everybody? Everybody's on something except for Member Siegel. All right. And is everybody happy with their assignment?
And Chair, if you just want to follow up with an email to me with those, just detailing with each one of those I can set those initial communications out to everybody.
All right. I just need the names and the rough idea, and Member or Vice Chair DeMatthew can send it to me what you wrote, and then I can compare it to what I wrote, and then we can put it together, and then I will send it to you, Jeremy. Okay.
I've also had a long discussion without public comment. So before this item gets finished up, I'd also suggest, Chair, that we call public comment.
Okay. Any public comment on this? The work plan?
Not seeing any.
Okay. Where is our public commenter? Okay, so are we okay then? We did it in 1 hour plus an hour. Yeah. It won't be as long next time because now we know what we're doing. All right, so it's future agenda items, right? That's the next thing on the agenda. Yes, so the future agenda items, anything you want, I mean, the work plan obviously will be on there.
I think the work plan is probably going to take up the majority of the time unless there's something else that
Okay.
the committee thinks we should be looking at.
I agree, especially if we have an hour. All right, is that it?
I just noticed in looking at the agenda, it looks like we did have a typo. The next meeting is listed as 7 p.m. That should be 6 p.m. do you want to call another special meeting at an earlier start time? Or is 6 p.m. correct?
It's the next meeting is in April, so an earlier start time, if it works for people, would be better for Member Lewis, right? Because
Correct.
he starts teaching at 6:30. So yes, if everybody would be, if that'd be okay with people.
So from 5 to 6 p.m. And with the possibility of going over a bit, that would have to be a motion to extend.
A motion to extend, oh, at the time.
The time, if you need.
Yeah. Okay, so for changing it to 5, we have to have a motion to do that.
If the committee wants to change the official time and meetings frequency, we'll have to go to council. But I believe that it can be scheduled as a special meeting with an adjustment to the time, and we can do that internally. I can talk with the city clerk and get some clarification and then report back to you.
Okay, that sounds good. So we don't need a motion right now. All right. Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to miss you, Member Yates.
You are always welcome to join as a member of the public to add your contributions. These are, of course, public meetings, and we would certainly benefit from your expertise and participation. So thank you for joining for this probably the shortest run on a city advisory body.
Thank you all.
I know.
We want to see your content on KALB too.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like bingo. Is that what you said? Yeah.
Send me an email after the meeting, and then we'll follow up on that because I didn't receive that, and I'd like to.
Sounds great.
Sure.
All right. All right. So how do I just adjourn?
Just adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you, everyone. It was great working with you. Looking forward to working more.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.